Somewhere in Paris, a foreign ministry keeps a page that names Dorchester, Mattapan, and Roxbury. It names Times Square. It names the Tenderloin. That is our travel warning about America, and almost none of us has ever read it. Now turn the same pen on Europe. The ministries can't stop naming things. A bus line, a boat stop, a square outside a cathedral. 3 places on a coastline too, but those wait until the end. The Americans are the accused here. Every piece of the evidence is European. Number 10. Houston. There is a sentence on the French page about Houston, and it asks you to be careful at night, in downtown, and in the south and the east of the city. That is the whole instruction. South and east. A whole American metropolis, sorted into compass directions by somebody who has to file the page and move on to the next country. 2 things have to be straight before the first pair lands. This is not a danger ranking, and nobody is scoring Houston, and the European half of each pair comes in 2 different kinds, and the 2 are kept apart all the way through. Sometimes it is the same foreign ministry writing about a European city, and that is a like-for-like comparison. Sometimes it is a country counting itself, which no foreign ministry could ever have done from abroad, and that is a narrower claim. Europe measures itself and has never once measured America. 10 readings, arranged so the European half gets harder to wave away as we go. Because Turin barely gets described either. Germany's foreign ministry mentions it inside a list of 4 cities at once, and tells you only what happens, never where. In the bigger cities it says, in Naples and Rome and Milan and Turin, bags and cameras and expensive watches and jewelry get torn away by motorized 2-wheelers riding past. No street, no square, no district. A method. So this first pair is close to honest. Houston gets 3 locators and Turin gets none, which means the paperwork here is no better about Europe than it is about America. That is as fair as this file ever gets. Hold on to that, because it is the last time the 2 sides come anywhere near level. Number 9. Boston. Boston is where the French page starts doing something closer to real work. It advises against walking alone at night, in parts of Dorchester, Mattapan, and Roxbury. 3 neighborhoods, spelled correctly, in a document produced an ocean away. For a European ministry, that is precision, and it is genuinely more than most American cities get. Now Florence, where the document stops warning and starts counting. Italy's own police data, published in the crime index that Il Sole 24 Ore builds every year out of the Interior Ministry's figures, records 11,051 thefts by sleight of hand across the province of Florence in a single year. That number was 48% higher than the year before. The category is a narrow one, the hand in the bag, not the bag torn off a shoulder, which Italy counts on a separate line. Spread across the calendar, that is roughly 30 a day, somewhere in the province, every day of the year. The Italian state doesn't estimate that figure. It went and counted, and it published the count by province and by category. 3 neighborhood names is a warning. 11,051 is a measurement, and only one of these 2 documents contains one. Which brings us to a city Europe uses as a punchline and couldn't describe if you paid it. Number 8. Detroit. Detroit does not get a sentence of its own. It shares one with Chicago and takes no locator out of it. Certain specific districts. Certain specific districts. A word that promises detail, a word that promises accuracy, and then a noun with nothing attached to it. If you were actually going to Detroit tomorrow, that sentence would not change a single decision you made. Hold it next to Naples. Even the warm-up line on the German page about Italy has more in it. Petty crimes such as pickpocketing, it opens, occurs above all in tourist centers and on beaches. That is the sentence written to cover everything, and it still hands you a kind of place you could picture. Then it gets to work. 3 buses, by number, on a page about somebody else's country. R2, 152, and 202, the ones running between the center and the station. A German civil servant working in Berlin knows which 3 buses in Naples you should be careful on and can't name one street in Detroit. There is a cost to a phrase like certain specific districts, and Detroit pays it, not the ministry. A reader who has never been finishes that sentence believing the whole city is the district in question. So if a ministry can find 3 bus numbers in a foreign city, what is it telling you when it can't find one street in a city its own press has been writing about for 50 years? Keep the shape of that clause in mind. Detroit had to share one, and the next city on the list had to share one too. Number 7. Baltimore. Baltimore's real indignity is not the compass. It is that in the sentence read here, Baltimore does not get a line of its own. Here is the sentence in full. Particularly at night, the page says, notably the northeast and southeast neighborhoods of Washington, the north of Philadelphia, and the south and the east of Baltimore. 3 cities, 2 states, and a federal district, dispatched in one clause with 5 compass points between them. Venice, meanwhile, gets the vaporetto. Specifically, the German page tells you to watch yourself at the stops and at the ticket windows for the water buses. Not in Venice, and not in the old city. At the ticket window itself. There is a queue in Venice where a European government believes your wallet is at risk, and it wrote the queue down. The gap between those 2 pages isn't a gap in danger, it's a gap in knowledge. You can't name a ticket window in a city you have never bothered to study, and you can always name a compass direction. And if you think that's unfair to a page with a whole country to cover, wait until you see what the same page does with the city Baltimore shares that clause with. Number 6. Chicago. Chicago is the city Detroit was sharing with. Chicago at least takes the locators out of that sentence, the South and the West, which is 2 more than Detroit got out of the same clause. Now Milan. In Italy's crime index, Milan came first among every province in the country, at 6,952 reported offenses for every 100,000 people living there. It is worth saying exactly what that index counts, because it matters. Every offense Italian police recorded, of every category, not theft alone. It ranks paperwork, and Milan tops it. And the German ministry, describing the same city, doesn't reach for a compass either. It names the cathedral square. It names the pedestrian zone. The city we reach for, when we want to prove a European metropolis, can be rich, modern, and orderly all at once, is the one that tops its own country's table for reports per head. Milan is where the German ministry does the thing it never does for America. It just does it at home. But the clearest version of this lies elsewhere. It is the pair where our governments give an American capital 2 compass points and give a European city a night train. Number 5. Washington. France is the pair here, and there is one sentence on that page worth the whole entry. The night trains in the south of France, Germany writes, the ones with sleeper and couchette cars, there the danger is elevated. Not France, not the railways. The carriages with beds in them, on the southern routes at night. Around it, the same page does say the looser things too, that Paris and the big cities are affected by petty crime, above all pickpocketing, and that public transport is where it happens. But the beds are the artifact. Somebody in that office knew which carriages. Washington produces the northeast and the southeast quarters, particularly at night. That is the entire capital of the United States. Belgium adds a line of its own about the whole country. The United States, it says, presents no particular risk to travelers. However, the crime rate there is higher than in European cities. One clause of reassurance, one clause of judgment, and not one place a person could stand in. Here is where somebody should object, and the objection is a real one. These European entries were cherry-picked. Somebody went looking for the detailed ones and found them. So take the answer in 2 parts. On the advisory pairs, nothing was cherry-picked, because the American page was read the same way and produced no equivalent: one office, one duty of care, two continents, two levels of effort. On the pairs built from crime statistics, the objection lands, and the honest claim there is narrower. Europe counts itself, and has never counted America. And in neither case has one European city been called dangerous here. The insult isn't being named. The insult is being reduced to a compass direction by somebody who never came. Which is the question nobody in this argument ever asks. Who writes these things, and what are they actually for? Who actually writes these pages? A travel advisory isn't a survey. Nobody walks a street to produce one. It is a duty of care document, written by a ministry that will one day be asked, in public, why no warning was given. Its first job is to have said something. Its second job is to be impossible to prove wrong. Which is why the thing that goes missing is always the same thing, and it is a street name, or anything that behaves like one. It is the smallest unit of a real warning, and a ministry only writes one down when it already knows the ground. Where it knows the ground, it will give you a bus route. Where it doesn't, it gives you a compass and calls that a warning. There is an honest explanation sitting right beside that one, and it deserves saying out loud. Call it proximity. If a ministry hears from its own citizens constantly about the countries next door, and rarely about the ones across an ocean, then of course, Berlin knows Naples better than it knows Detroit. That would explain why the knowledge exists. It would not explain why the page about Detroit is allowed to sound like a finding rather than a shrug. Read Germany's own American page, and you can watch the shrug happen in real time. Pickpocketing, muggings and car break-ins occur in many urban centers of the USA, it says. And then, immediately, the retreat. The danger varies greatly depending on the town, and within a big city depending on the district. Which is true. It is also a ministry putting in writing that it isn't going to do the part you needed. So which document have we all been reading? One written to protect the traveler, or one written to protect the office that published it? Nobody had to conspire. There is a deadline, a legal department, and a continent nobody was ever funded to walk. Which is why the next 4 pages read the way they do, starting with the only American city whose crime France was willing to call by its own name. Number 4. New Orleans. For New Orleans, France writes the exact words. Many cases of pickpocketing are reported. Vols à la tire. Not petty crime, not delinquency, but the thing itself, called by its own name, the only time it turns up in any of the entries read here. So set it beside Barcelona. In 1 year, the Spanish Interior Ministry recorded 79,811 hurtos in the city, and they made up 45.4% of every crime reported there. Hurto is the Spanish category for theft without force on things, and without violence on persons, which is broader than pickpocketing, bags, pockets, shoplifting, but never anything taken by force, which Spain counts on its own line. So here is the honest sentence. Nearly half of all recorded crime in Barcelona is somebody taking something without laying a hand on anyone. One thing to keep straight before another number lands. Germany, Italy, and Spain do not count the same offense as each other, and none of them counts what the FBI counts. These are separate piles, not scores, and not one of them is being set against another here. Barcelona is also going the right way, and leaving that out would be the trick this whole comparison exists to expose. The hurtos figure fell 6.8% from the year before, down from 85,652. Crime of every kind in the city fell too, from 166 reports to 175,687. The pile is genuinely shrinking. It is still nearly half of everything the city writes down. And Germany isn't gentle about it either. In Barcelona especially, its page says, incidents involving the use of force occur more often. It adds that along the Spanish motorways, and above all on the A7 between the French border post at La Jonquera and Barcelona, Drivers are robbed again and again. A named road and a named border crossing. New Orleans at least got its crime named. The biggest city in America got parks. Number 3, New York. New York does better than most, and that's the point. Petty and mid-level crime, plus assaults on the subway, are rising noticeably in the tourist districts of New York, such as Times Square. Avoid walking alone at night in quiet areas, certain parts of the Bronx in particular, and in parks, notably Central Park. Times Square, the Bronx, Central Park. The page found the 3 place names a European already had in their head before they opened it. Rome is the comparison, and Rome is where the paperwork stops being vague in any language. Across the province, 33,431 thefts by sleight of hand in 1 year, up 4.8%, in a place whose entire economy is people carrying cameras. And Berlin has mapped the journey. The rail lines in from Fiumicino Airport, the stations themselves, and then the buses, by number, 40,062 and 64. This time it isn't a district, and it isn't a method. It's a timetable. One page names the bus, the other names a country. Number 2, Los Angeles. Los Angeles draws more warning than anywhere else in these entries, and it is worth noticing what the warnings are actually about. Certain zones should be avoided, the page says, naming Watts, Inglewood, and Florence, 3 names the page files under Los Angeles. And then the part that matters. Mobile phone thefts are regularly reported in the tourist spots. Hollywood, Santa Monica, Venice Beach. A phone, taken off a tourist, on a beach. That's the accusation, and it's a fair one. Now hold it up against the country whose ministry wrote nothing comparable about itself. German police recorded 107,720 pickpocketings in 1 year, attempted and completed, as German police count them, not in one city. In Germany, nationally, and here the pairing breaks on purpose, because no ministry writes an advisory about its own country. Of those, they cleared 7,425, which is 6.9%, and clearing a case here means a suspect was identified, not that anybody was convicted or that anything came back. So 100,295 of those thefts ended with nobody identified at all. The year before, the count was higher still at 109,314, and it has come down slightly since. 5 years earlier, it stood at 94,106, so across those 5 years, the direction is up. Germany doesn't put that number on its page about Germany, because ministries don't write travel advisories about themselves. That count is simply what German police recorded, with the clearance rate printed in the next column. An honest document about Germany, which is the only kind Germany writes. Forget the size of the number for a second, because the size is the weakest thing about it. 6.9% is the fact no rebuttal touches. In 93 cases out of every 100, the German state wrote the theft down and never found out who did it. That is the country whose page about America fits theft into a single sentence, which leaves one city, one ministry, one crime, and 2 completely different levels of effort. Number 1, San Francisco. You are in a rental car on a hill in San Francisco, and you are about to do the thing every European traveler does. You are about to leave the bag in the trunk, because it's only 20 minutes, and because at home, that's a perfectly ordinary thing to do. France did find 2 names in this city, the Tenderloin and the blocks around Civic Center, one of which was read out in the very first breath of all this. And then it found a sentence none of the other entries got. It strongly advises leaving strictly nothing in vehicles, because smashing windows to steal bags left in cars is particularly frequent. Strictly nothing. On a page that couldn't find one street in Detroit, San Francisco got the word strictly. And that sentence is right. American property crime isn't a European invention. The FBI's own estimate for that year was 5,986,400 property offenses, down 8.1% on the year before, at a rate of 1,760.1 for every 100,000 people. That figure is national, and there is no San Francisco number here to set beside it, which is worth saying plainly, rather than filling the gap with something that merely sounds close. The warning about the car window is good advice, honestly given. Now, the same German ministry that couldn't name one American street, that gave an entire country a single sentence about theft, knows exactly where the car windows go in near Rome. Particular care is required when parking cars near the beach, it says. For example, in Ostia, Fiumicino, and Fregene. 3 places on the coast. Named. A stretch of shoreline outside Rome, written down by a government that could have reached across an ocean to be that specific about America and never did. Somebody went along the coast west of Rome asking where a family on holiday would actually stop, and never once asked that question about the United States. Go and look at both German pages yourself, on the same afternoon, one after the other. Did the page about America ever tell you where to stand? The page you were never going to read. None of this makes America safe, and none of it makes Europe dangerous. That was never the argument. The argument is that our travel warning about America is a document about us, not about an American city, and it has been read as the opposite by people who never opened one. The proof is that our paperwork can get specific about a European street in a way it has never once managed about an American one. A bus number, a ticket window, a cathedral square, 3 named places on a coast outside Rome. All the precision anyone could ask for, pointed inward, while an entire continent on the other side of the ocean gets a compass and a shrug. And the detail that gives the whole thing away is the smallest one in the file. A ministry wrote Fiumicino down twice on the same page, once as the airport you land at, once as the coast you shouldn't park on. It never wrote a single American place down twice, because it never managed to write one down once. Say in the comments which of the 10 readings you wouldn't have believed, and if you have ever been pickpocketed on either continent, name the city, because nobody is counting that the same way on both sides of the ocean. That is the one thing a Europe travel warning about America was never going to tell you. If reading 2 government pages against each other is the kind of thing you want more of, a like genuinely moves this to people who would never search for it. Subscribing, bell included, is what puts the next one in front of you. A document Europe publishes about itself, read the way Europe reads America. Please note, this video compares publicly available travel advisories against published national crime statistics, quoted as they stood on the date of recording. The advisories were read on that date. The crime figures are all from the 2024 reporting year, published in 2025. Advisories are revised frequently, and crime is counted differently in every country, so nothing here is travel advice or a safety ranking. Check your own government's current guidance before you travel.